Welcome, I'm Lynn Dunton.
And I'm Jasiri Jenkins-Glenn.
And you're watching Santa Cruz Currents.
Keeping you current on all things Santa Cruz.
We have a great show for you today, but first, the news.
Santa Cruz ended 2015 with the do-it-yourself parade. Although no longer organized and still illegal, it has become a tradition in Santa Cruz. People gathered for the parade around 5:30 p.m. when bagpipers started the parade down Pacific Avenue to the delight of passersby. Santa Cruz police and impromptu leaders made sure that the parade safely crossed streets. An electrical sitar player on a rickshaw, kids in costumes, peace activists, Bernie Sanders supporters, beach flat garden activists, people on stilts, and others were there. Onlookers applauded, showed peace signs, and took pictures. At the end of Pacific Avenue, the drummers, sitar player, and the bagpipers thrilled the participants and onlookers alike with a jam session that rocked the crowd.
This January, the Fungus Federation of Santa Cruz held the 42nd annual Fungus Fair. Over 3 days, thousands of visitors saw hundreds of mushroom species on display. There are also lectures on fungi, cooking demonstrations, and art projects, mushroom-flavored ice creams, and cheesecakes. The purpose of the Fungus Fair, according to Phil Carpenter of the Fungus Federation, is to introduce the local public to the world of wild mushrooms and to show people what mushrooms exist in the area and what you can eat and what you cannot eat. There are about 2,000 mushroom species in Santa Cruz County, and some are edible. 50% of the proceeds of the Fungus Fair are earmarked for scholarships for young people who are interested in starting the study of mycology. Fungi are essential to the environment. They play a role in recycling. They break down organic matter and make it available to plant life. They are critical to the survival of many plants and trees. Plus, some are delicious to eat.
The Resource Center for Nonviolence and Santa Cruz NAACP presented Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Weekend, highlighting Dr. King's many contributions to American society. The celebration began on Saturday afternoon with Youth Day, which acknowledged young leaders, and carried on into the evening with Gospel Night, which featured a variety of local gospel choirs. Activities continued on Sunday afternoon with a reading of a letter from Birmingham Jail. Written on April 16, 1963, Dr. King's open letter defended the strategy of nonviolent resistance to racism. The weekend-long event ended with a day of doing for others with the Santa Cruz Volunteer Center. County community members were invited to sign up for a day devoted to community volunteerism and uplift. The remembrance of Dr. King and his dream will continue on Friday, February 12th at 7 p.m. when the Santa Cruz Civic Auditorium will host the 32nd annual Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Convocation. The event is free and open to the public. Now let's turn our attention to a short video about the warming centers in Santa Cruz County.
Santa Cruz is known as a summer fun town, but those who live here know that there are other modes. In fact, things can get quite bracing. In the winter of 2013, the West Coast was surprised with a frozen cold snap that left many hundreds of homeless people from Boulder Creek to Watsonville out in the cold. The National Guard Armory Winter Shelter was maxed out at 100 people. The Homeless Services Center did all they could do to help those who showed up to the campus for shelter.
Jeff Johnson, age 49. Roger Geron, age 57.
It became clear that there is a need for something more when extreme conditions occur. The annual memorial of homeless people who had died in the previous year brought the issue starkly into the forefront.
Steve and I went to school together. We grew up in Santa Cruz together. We surfed the same waves and played a lot of the same sports.
Community members began meeting weekly. They knew that as individuals, they wouldn't have access to the needed gymnasiums and auditoriums, the emergency hotlines, and the many aspects that it would take to create such a system. California Office of Emergency Services contingency plan for extreme cold and freeze emergencies that came out in December 2013. So they began reaching out to city and county officials, Homeless Services Center, the Red Cross, United Way, the Salvation Army, and the faith community.
In the end, it was a group of unpaid citizens that came up with a plan. And here it is. It's the Santa Cruz Warming Center protocols.
Over the course of 2 months, these dedicated residents created the skeleton of the Warming Center program. United Way offered a 211 emergency hotline.
So on freezing nights, anybody can call 211 to find out when and where to go.
After reaching out to local governments, clubs, halls, and churches, it was the faith community that stepped forward first to offer large rooms and gymnasiums to meet the needs of homeless people on freezing nights. More large halls are needed. A group of overnight monitors will be needed and are expected to be trained by the coordinator of HSC's Armory Winter Shelter. The program will also be maintaining and storing several hundred floor pads. We know that our local misty Santa Cruz air can make the cold feel colder, while clothing and bedding may be difficult to keep dry in winter months. Hypothermia spikes with age. It isn't uncommon for a person who is 50 years old, wearing regular clothes and a blanket, to experience hypothermia at well above freezing temperature. The warming center has set its trigger forecast temperature at 38 degrees or lower. More than 40 homeless people died in 2013 in our area, and many of them from issues related to hypothermia. That could have been avoided if there were ample places to go when it approaches freezing. Robert Blind Bear Facer lived a wandering homeless lifestyle for decades as he traveled the Northwest Pacific from Alaska to Santa Cruz on homemade kayaks. He came to live for several years in Santa Cruz and eventually died of pneumonia, which is an avoidable disease often attributed to the experience of hypothermia.
Leo Brown, age 66. Jack Burkett, age 64. Dennis Butler, age 54.
We're happy to report that to date we've handed out several hundred 211 emergency hotline cards. We have a 501c3 nonprofit sponsorship.
Fiscal sponsor, a few locations for people to go to. So far, we're going to need more.
That was a great video about the Warming Center program here in Santa Cruz. With me today I have Brent Adams, who is the program administrator and program manager, and also Nancy Crusoe, who is a board member and a volunteer with the Warming Center. Welcome. Brett, we'll start with you. If you could just give us a little bit of background on the Warming Center and what's happening with it recently.
We're in our second year of opening, of operation. We've been opening quite a large number of times this winter as we've increased our temperature thresholds. We'll be opening on Sunday and Monday, and really because we open when they're, I think I'm getting too information heavy already, but when the temperature reaches a certain degree, which is in this case 35 degrees or lower, or after several days of rain. We have a big rainstorm coming in on Sunday, so we'll be opening automatically.
Okay. You say this is only the second year. I would assume that there have been programs like this going on prior to this. What has happened that has changed that either requires one now or requires the reinstitution of one?
Yeah, you may have heard of the winter shelter at the Armory. I believe that started a decade ago as a type of warming center at 40 degrees, and then they just decided to leave it open through the winter, and that does a lot of really good service for the community, but it has several limitations and drawbacks. One being that you have to be in line by 4:30, and after 6 p.m. people aren't able to access it. They can't bring their dogs or bikes or large backpacks. So with our program, it's more focused downtown, and people can bring all of those large items, and the door is open all night long. And that's kind of, and we're accessing a different population downtown than the Homeless Services Center accesses.
So the Warming Center currently is just for downtown Santa Cruz at this point in time?
Not specifically. It's for everybody who's not going to the Armory. We have a shuttle. We'll pick up anywhere in the Santa Cruz area, and we do pick up people as far out as the Soquel area.
Okay. In terms of numbers, do you have sufficient spaces for individuals at this point in time for the current people that are requiring shelter?
We try to have numerous site locations on our list. We use Peace United Church, Calvary Episcopal, and the Quaker Meeting House. And successfully, recently, the City Council just voted to allow us to use a city facility. So what we try to do is spread the use out so as not to overly burden one location too much. So we're expecting to be open around 30 to 40 days this winter, potentially 50 if the rain really kicks in, and then we'll be at each location approximately 15 days, and we spread it out so that it's not all in one phase. So, for instance, Sunday we'll be opening at Peace United Church, and then on Monday we'll be at the Quaker Meeting House. But the way we fuse that all together is one shuttle location downtown. And if I may, the shuttle location is Pearl Alley, just as it meets Lincoln Street, kind of right across the street from Total Fitness. And we serve soup between 7 and 10 as people are waiting for the shuttle.
And how many spaces do you have available in your shelters?
We always plan for about 65 people. That's kind of where our we've been serving between 50 and 65 people almost every time, but we always come prepared to serve at least 100 people with enough blankets and floor pads on hand.
So you haven't had to turn anyone away at this point in time?
Nope. Nope. The only time we ever had to turn somebody away is for rule violations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but, CTV is, located here in downtown Santa Cruz, and occasionally, when I come to CTV in the morning, I do see people sleeping in various doorways in downtown. So is the information getting out to the various homeless population about this program at this point?
Maybe Nancy would like to talk about that.
Well, we probably not as much as we would like, but we do have teams of people going around town when we're opening and trying to contact as many people as possible and have them tell others. Also, there's a 211 number that I hope everyone knows about by now. Anyone can call and find out if we're going to be open and where as well. Can they? Well, there's some spaces that they need to ride the shuttle to get to, but 211 always has the information.
Okay.
And Brent has he gets individual calls as well.
Yeah, the 211 number will give people if they're it's spotty activation. We've noticed it's not always perfect, but they'll always give potential guests my phone number, and then they can find out directly what's happening. And so I do get calls almost every night at questioning. But yeah, we do the street team. We hand out maps. We activate lots of different food kitchens and places where people are congregating to get the word out.
But since this happens usually on a 2-day notice, 1 or 2 day notice, we have to hustle at the last minute
So you have
to let
about
people
a 2
know.
days
Well, the
notice?
forecasts are not always accurate,
Yeah,
you know. Yeah.
that's
yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah.
What happens if we have an unexpected cold snap or something like that? What happens in those cases?
Well, I watch very obsessively. I'm watching the Weather Underground site. We use one weather location, and there are probably 20 in the downtown area, but none of them are really downtown, unfortunately, to give us the most representative forecast. And they fluctuate wildly every few minutes, actually. But we use one at the Grand Street Park, and that's kind of at the same elevation as downtown Santa Cruz, our target location. And so we watch weather patterns coming and going, and to be as accurate as possible, we have to get our volunteers scheduled and the site location lined up and the 211 activation ready. We do need about a 2-day pre-warning, but we find that's usually good enough. If there's a cold snap, hopefully we'll get it in time. We've missed a few rain events to date, but we're really liberally using our liberal reading of our activation triggers so that we're kind of opening more instead of less, but hopefully.
Okay, let's talk about the board and volunteers. How did people become involved? How did you become involved with the Warming Center?
Well, I was working with Brent on Sanctuary Camp and hoping to establish something for homeless people, a place where there's more than an overnight stay, but a community building. And then the winter 2 years ago was extremely cold and bitter, and all of us around town noticed freezing people who had nowhere to go. And I felt that there was an awareness that I personally hadn't seen before. Maybe it's because I retired and noticed. And Brent suddenly had the idea and did the research for a warming center and found, you know, there are several towns and cities in California that have warming centers. And he started calling meetings. People wanted to be involved. Lots of people wanted to be involved. It's not difficult now to get volunteers either, because now there's a Google group and a lot of people know about it,
And
a Facebook page. And initially, I just thought it would take off and that people would just be standing at the door waiting to volunteer. But in fact, at this point, it feels like that is what's happening, because we've been open enough, I think, that word has spread.
Now, does the Warming Center work with other organizations in the area?
Well, we are partnering, it's a community-supported organization, partnering with the churches, with the United Way, with the 211 number, now partnering with the city around location. What are the other organizations? We don't really partner. We welcome as many, so it's really those churches that offer the site locations. It's a series of donated blankets, fundraisers to buy the floor pads, the volunteer component, and then the site locations. But that's when she mentions 2 years ago when we started hosting these meetings, we didn't want to actually start our own warming center like we had. We wanted to jumpstart the conversation, and maybe some of these more appropriate organizations, I won't list them, but they're the mega nonprofits that are known to care for people, the county and the city, and it was a slow conversation. So we actually realized in the planning stages of those meetings that we were actually kind of developing the warming center as we went, compiling research and then showing the community what it could look like. We actually had unintentionally developed a warming center here, and then all we had to do was start filling in some of these elements. The biggest piece was Calvary Episcopal being the first site location, and the blanket donation showed up, and we had a fundraiser, and we bought floor pads, and we had a handful of volunteers, and we were off to the races. And since then, it's mainly been the community support, an outpouring of community members coming through as volunteers, blanket donations, and seed, small grants like checks of $20 here and there has really been the key. And now we're becoming a little bit more legitimized at showing a track record that we're helping people. And now the community, the local governments are following in, because it turns out they are actually legally responsible for the care of people in their community.
Yeah, I was watching the meeting on Monday, was it? The city council meeting?
Yeah.
And you know, the city council was actually fairly reluctant in some regards to sign on for this, actually feeling that it was a county responsibility. So why was the county not involved at this point, and you went to the city instead of?
Well, Brent, talk to that.
Well, I believe it's the county that has, they take care of human health. They have medical, human services, and so they're really responsible for all things that happen for the people. And then the various cities are more responsible for.
Well, our time is just about up. How would someone, wanted to volunteer, be able to volunteer? What would be the best way of contacting?
I hate to give Brent more phone calls, because that's almost unfair. They can
email.
Email would work.
Okay.
They can email either.
CompassionMan@hotmail.
I would like to thank our guests, Brent and Nancy, for talking with us about the Warming Center. And now here we go to Sarah Eisenberg and the Tech Beat.
I'm Sarah Eisenberg, founder and publisher of Santa Cruz Tech Beat. Santa Cruz Tech Beat is the go-to source for all things tech in our region, from comprehensive news about local tech business developments and startups, to thought leadership from our local tech ecosystem. Plus, Santa Cruz Tech Beat has job and event listings, resources, and more. I'm here to tell you about some current developments in the local tech scene that you need to know. Let's start off with some hot news from Looker, a business intelligence startup headquartered in Santa Cruz. Looker has just secured $48 million in funding. They'll use this to accelerate the company's growth in sales, marketing, and engineering, as well as to fuel further international expansion. Looker has raised a total of $96 million since launching in 2013. Looker, we hope you'll stay in Santa Cruz. Electric skateboards are a hot new trend. A variety of companies in and out of Santa Cruz are developing electric skateboards. One such company is Santa Cruz-based Inboard Technology. Inboard's first product is the M1 electric skateboard. Central Coast Angels, a local investment group, recently funded Inboard with a substantial seed investment. What's substantial? They didn't say. Ed Colligan, a member of Central Coast Angels, said Inboard's product, brand, and management team, many of whom are action sports experts, are a perfect fit for Santa Cruz. The M1 is the first skateboard with motors inside the wheels, so it's very low profile. Another local company, Calliope Waterworks, recently made a big splash at CES, the annual Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Calliope competed in the TechCrunch hardware battlefield. Calliope's water monitoring product helps home water users see how their water is being used, including leak alerts. 14 startups competed in the hardware battlefield. Pitching to judges on stage, the startups competed for $50,000 and to be named the winner of the competition. While Calliope didn't win, being included in this competition provided great exposure at CES and beyond. Speaking of local companies, Monarch Media, an award-winning e-learning company, is collaborating with the Eurasian Center for Food Security at Moscow State University, yes, the one in Russia, to develop 2 online master's degree programs, both focused on food security needs in the Eurasian region. The programs will equip students for careers in agribusiness, natural resources management, and food security. This project is a great example of how Monarch's work in e-learning has a global impact. In UCSC news, the Baskin School of Engineering has just named Alexander Wolf as the new dean, effective July 1st. Wolf comes to UCSC from Imperial College London. He will succeed Joe Konopelski, who has served as interim dean since Art Ramirez stepped down in July 2014. In other Baskin engineering news, the school recently hired acclaimed independent game developer Aaron Robinson Swink to be the creative director of the master's degree program in games and playable media at UCSC's Silicon Valley Center. As creative director, Swink will develop the overall creative vision for the program and will represent the program to the international game development community. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time for more news and developments from the Santa Cruz tech scene. And of course, for the latest news, jobs, events, anytime, go to santacruztechbeat.com.
Thank you, Sarah, for the updated information about the tech scene in Santa Cruz. Our community is filled with many activities. Here are some happenings for this month. Thank you to Linda Janekos for putting together the community calendar.
As we conclude our first show of 2016, we want to leave you with some words from Martin Luther King Jr.
Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter.
Here at CTV, we have the means and the opportunities for all of our community to speak out about the issues that affect us.
We invite you all to join us in utilizing the resources available here at CTV so you can share with others what really matters to our community.
This is Santa Cruz Currents, which airs Mondays at 6 p.m., Wednesday at 10 a.m., and Saturdays at 9 p.m. on Comcast Channel 27, with a new program every month.
We'll see you next time.